Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I hope you guys are doing well today. So, I am Dr. Sampson. Happy Social Work Month and Women's History Month. We're going to be celebrating all month long. And what I'm going to be doing is interviewing some dynamic women. They're going to come on board and just share their story, share their experiences with you guys, and provide some empowering information. So this evening, I have the pleasure of of meeting and interviewing Ms. Jessica Renae. She is a licensed therapist in Kentucky, and Jessica is going to share. She's going to drop some gems with you this evening. So Jessica, please introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do, where you currently practicing.
Yes, like she said, my name is Jessica Renae, on Facebook, and Jessica Rogers, and that's my last name. But I am a licensed therapist in the state of Kentucky. Um, I currently work for Bellwood, and I also do some contract work for another therapist agency here in the area. Um, I have one daughter. She just turned 16 yesterday, so
Oh,
you know,
happy
I'm happy.
birthday.
Yeah, I'm happy and sad at the same time because she's growing up on me.
Yeah.
Um, I have been in the field of social work for the last 10 years. Um, and working in, I guess, mental health for part of that time too, 3 years. And so that's really what I do. I work with women, men, kids, families. With Bellwood, I do outpatient therapy work. So patients are referred to our program through DCBS. And sometimes families are happy to have you, and sometimes families are like, I'm just here because they made me. And that's
Absolutely.
okay. But we work all the well the same, and I just go in and try to help the families where I can. And it's been a pleasure.
Okay. So you're currently working with families. You're not working with no specific population or specific demographics, just families.
No, I live in a urban area, but we work with 14 counties.
Okay.
So I go out into the rural areas too. So um yeah, we have families who are all ends of the spectrum, like lower uh I won't say poverty level, but they are lower middle class, and we have families who are well-to-do. Nobody's exempt from DCBS,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, you
Absolutely.
know.
Yes,
And
true.
so,
That
and I
is,
know DCBS is that acronym is different in every state. So,
yes,
when I
I
say
was going to ask you that. So can you say in your state what it meant? Because I'm sure in New York it's different.
yes, now that we said that, it's Division of Child and Family Services, basically.
Okay.
Um, I I can't think of the whole acronym now that I just
Yeah.
said that. But Division of Child Based Services. So these
Yeah.
are it's the people that go to court and say, "Hey, we think we should remove the kids, not remove the kids."
Right. So in New York, it's ACS, so
Okay.
Administration for Children's Services, but pretty much it's the same work.
Yeah.
Children's lives are in jeopardy or in danger, and we have to work her, coming in, provide services, whether it's removal, the same work pretty much. And like you said, just
Yes.
different acronyms. So can you tell us about what other areas have you practiced in the field?
Um, I've also, before I was a therapist, I was a case manager for foster care youth. So those living outside of their biological family's home. And then I was also an independent living case manager. So that is kids who have turned 18 in the system and had decided to recommit and are living on their own, but also still have a case manager to help them with areas of their life maybe they haven't learned or are still trying to progress in until they turn 21.
Okay. So more or less like their daily living skills, getting
Mhm.
resources such as job and
Yes. Uh-huh.
okay, okay. And why did you choose the field of social work?
Well, I will say I think like social work just kind of chose me. Uh,
Mhm.
I actually I was one of those people, right? They tell you to choose your career based off what you enjoyed in school. So I enjoyed PE, right? I was going
Okay.
to be a PE teacher, and that's what my undergraduate is actually in. Um,
Oh.
yeah. So I was going to be a PE teacher, got into student teaching, quickly found out this is not for me.
Mm,
But I had my daughter by that point, so it wasn't going to be wise for me to like start a new degree over again. So I graduated, and then when I still try to pursue teaching,
okay.
but it really still wasn't. I knew I didn't want to do it, but um when I realized that practice test is hard and your girl's not good at math, okay? So when I realized I wasn't going to pass that test,
Hmm.
I said, I got to switch gears. And so I always knew I've always been a helper. My family isn't like, it's our educators, but I've always been raised to like doing community service, doing things like that. So I knew I was a helper.
Okay.
Um, so in applying for jobs, I got a job working at a mental health hospital. It's called Rivendell here in Bowling Green. And I got the job and I worked there for 2 years. Um, and I saw a lot, right? It basically what they do is depending on where you're working in the hospital, it's basically a stabilization hospital. So kids come in who are suicidal, get them stabilized on medicine. They're there for about a week. Some kids are, when I was working there, kids could be there a lot longer, but it just depended on what insurance would pay for. And then you send them home. But we saw kids come in like same kids come in like a week later, they're back.
Lord,
And
yeah.
so yeah, I enjoyed helping, but I also realized like there's got to be a better way to help because I just kind of felt like I was starting to feel like I was just babysitting.
Okay.
So after that, that's how I got into the agency I'm with now and became a foster care case manager. And
Okay.
then I've been here ever since and just kind of done different capacities.
Oh, awesome, awesome. You know, it's
Mhm.
funny, I've often heard social workers said that they chose the field of nursing first, but they
Really?
didn't like the hands-on, but they like, the communication, they like the clinical aspect of it. So that's why they
Mhm.
went to social work. But I've never heard like a PE. This is my
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
interesting. That's very interesting. So what does being a social worker means to you?
Well, being a social worker to me is a person who first, like you're coming to help, but also to do no harm, right? I know everybody has a different view on what help looks like. Um, but my definition of helping is to help people, is to bring awareness.
Mhm.
And so we're quick to tell families they're wrong about something, but sometimes yes, like don't get me wrong, like there are some things that are just wrong no matter who's doing it, right? um because it's doing harm, but sometimes people are doing the best they have with what they have. And just because I'm used to living a certain way and a certain lifestyle, I can't put that on them because they may not have the means to do that.
Mhm.
And so I think sometimes that we go in with what we feel is right and we end up doing harm because we're saying, hey, it's not how, we're not saying that that's not how I would live, but our actions are saying you should be doing better than what you're doing.
Right. That is so important because a lot of times we come with our preconceived notion and biases and we project it onto our clients. And the
Yes.
sad thing is sometimes we're not even aware. We're
Yeah.
not even aware that we're doing it. And it's so easy to say the client is non-compliant, but we
Hmm.
have to always, look at ourselves and we have to be self-aware. So that is very important.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some positives about this field? You've stated a lot about, your career, you've had a wealth of experience. What do
Yeah.
you think are some positives?
I think some positives about this field are that you can plant some good seeds with people and you can see progress happen.
Mm,
I think we oftentimes hear too much about the disaster stories, But when a family is able to have their kids go to school the whole year and not when they were truant, you know what I'm saying? That's a win. And
Yeah,
so I think there's a lot of small wins, even if they're not big, but there are some good big wins. And when you get to participate in that, that's awesome.
yeah,
In my case, like being able to participate in adoptions where the kids are happy, like the family, is really in tune with the kids. Like it's awesome to see those adoptions happen. Um and what are some other ones? Um I think also too just getting to work with knowing that somebody who didn't want you in their home, by the time like maybe you leave that intervention, they're like, what I wish you would come back,
yeah,
like you're part of the family, or they want
yeah,
you, they don't want to see you leave now. So I think just knowing there are people who may be ambivalent at first, but then you come back and they're like, okay, you know, I'm so glad we did this, or I'm glad you are here to help.
absolutely, absolutely. And then what are some negatives? What are some
Ooh,
challenges that you face in the social work field? I know you have an endless list.
yes. So because I'm not a state worker,
Mhm.
I was the middleman. I'm still am the middleman. And so sometimes we don't always get great state workers for the families that we work with. So when you see kids sitting in foster care and they shouldn't be, because their case has been passed around so many times and everybody's like, oh, well, I've got to learn the case, and it takes even longer to
Yeah,
make movement or do something. Um, when I see, I'm working with a client now, um, when I see kids taken from the home and, uh, you know, the family gets run around information. Nobody's really direct with them. Um, I think that all social workers should be really direct and give upfront information, because this their life
yeah.
where, and so um the stigma of, well, not stigma, but the after effects of being in the system, right? Never really feeling comfortable because it could happen again, or, you know, um, yeah,
And
it was just a few.
that speaks to systems traumatizing or re-traumatizing our
Yeah.
clients, you know,
Yes.
when the system is actually put in place as a safe haven, and sometimes it can actually be traumatizing or re-traumatizing. And what you described is
Yes.
exactly what happens, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So speaking of traumatizing, have you ever encountered systematic barriers? I think you touched on it a little bit. Have you encountered systematic barriers in any of your professions?
Um, yes and no. I think, I guess you would say kind of vicariously, not maybe directly.
Okay.
Um, like when you're working with a client and you're trying to advocate for them, but you can clearly see like there is a bias, right? And it's like I can't do anything to break the bias down because I see this in smaller counties. Like I said, I work with smaller counties surrounding the area. When I say smaller, like you're in New York, I don't know. I
Having
know.
Brooklyn, Queens.
Yeah, like so say if you were to detach Brooklyn from New York and then place it like 30 minutes away, like that. And then when you have social workers who go into the field there, like state workers,
Mhm.
but they've been in that county, they work in the county they live in, right? And that were raised in. I think sometimes I see a lot of biases because like, oh, I know that person. I went to school with their father, or I went to school with
Okay.
their mom, and I know how they were, and
Got it.
so it's hard to get through
Yeah.
that personal stuff first.
Yeah.
And I see some of that. So I'm not directly affected, but it's kind of like it affects me because I'm trying to help this family.
Yes. Yes. And it trickles down
Yes.
to you who have to work with that family.
Hmm.
Yeah. What does the word advocate mean to you?
Advocate means to say the hard things that
Mm.
nobody wants to say. And I'm good at that. Like sometimes I try to be like, Jessica, be quiet. Because because sometimes I say it prematurely, but but it
Yeah,
needs to be said. But yeah, I think it's saying the things that nobody wants to say, or it's obvious, but still nobody wants to address it because it would create something else or that they just don't want to deal with, right?
right,
But when it comes to kids, especially if they have a chance to go home, we can't, that's not fair to the kid just because you don't want to have more paperwork or XYZ. No, we gotta do this now. And why are we not doing it?
right,
Yeah.
right. So sometimes we have to be a voice for them because
Yeah.
most of our population are the underserved population. So yeah, definitely. Do you engage in any type of community-based work?
Yes.
I
I actually work with I'm a volunteer for, it's called the Freedom Walkers here in Bowling Green.
okay.
They actually do a lot of community dinners for anybody that wants to come, but also like they feed the homeless. They do like Juneteenth activities, and so it is more of a civil rights group,
Mm,
but it serves everybody. It's about community, and so nobody. It's not like, oh, we just only serve black and brown, but it serves everybody.
okay, sounds great. Sounds like great
Mhm.
work.
Yeah.
And for someone who's looking to get into this field, what would you advise? Would you tell them run, or would you tell them come on board?
I wouldn't say run. I would just say know why you're doing it, because if it's for the money, it's not, that ain't, this
Mm.
ain't for you.
Okay.
If you want if you don't like if you want a set schedule where you go in at 8, you get off at 5, don't
Yeah.
nobody else bother you after you get off of work, don't do this field.
That's
And
for
if you can
you.
do it like that, let me know how.
Absolutely. I hear you. And in addition to celebrating Social Work Month, we're celebrating Women's History Month. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions based on that. So, what does Women's History Month means to you?
Um, Women's History Month means celebrating uh, um all women, like the gains that we've made as women, um working in any field that you're in, because we all know like women's rights has been a, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was like took that off, and so we have come a long way just as a group of women, but also reminding us to celebrate each other. um I have a show that I do. It's called The Godly View, and we were just talking about that. Is like, we think about the big women, like we think about Michelle Obama, Oprah, and stuff like that. But you and I are daily impacting history. So, it's celebrating from the big all the way down to the people that are working boots on the ground.
Absolutely. Celebrating
And
all of us.
yeah, and I think we as women, so we can get caught up in the being catty, but it's a
Hmm.
reminder to celebrate. Like, you're doing what you're doing, I see you. I'm doing what I'm doing. You see me, and I can. How can we work together? So,
Yes, yes, absolutely. And if you can pick one woman that's an inspiration to you, who would you pick and why would
mm,
she be such an inspiration?
uh, hmm. I'm gonna say myself, but I'm gonna say my grandmother,
Okay.
because she does a lot. She was actually in social work too, but I wasn't born at that time, and I think she actually worked in California as a social worker
Okay.
and talked about a lot of the things that we were still talking about today are still some of the things she was met with.
Yeah.
But she turned educator. She was a
Mm,
psychology teacher, but um, my grandma, like she, growing up a Black woman, they made little money, and so they made a lot out of a little. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I would
Right.
say her.
And we're still, with trying to bridge that gap between women's pay and men's pay, because women still
Yes.
get less for, working the same role.
Right. And sometimes harder.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So we're still working on that.
Yeah.
Do you do anything to celebrate Social Work Month or Women's History Month?
Um, I was talking about this as well. Like, do you think it's celebrated enough? I guess in my younger years, I guess because I wasn't in the work field or whatever, but I'm just realizing that it's being celebrated. And so I won't say that I have done anything um for Women's History Month specifically.
Okay.
But Social Workers Month, we try to do something at our job, like we acknowledge it, and things like we may have a potluck, but
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
I think you mentioned earlier about having your own private company. So tell us about that. Any business venture that you do, and where can we find you?
Yes. Well, the thing that I was talking about is it's called The Godly League. It's a podcast that I do with three other women. It's not social work related, but we do it just kind of the pastor that started it, he asked us to do it during the pandemic. So we've been doing it now for like 3 years. We're on Facebook. It's called The Godly View. We have our own page, and we just get on there. We do have topics. We were talking about Women's History Month this month.
Okay.
Um, and we invite guests on the show. We talk about different topics. We do a hot topic show. Um, so that's what I was really talking about. It's not social work related, but
Okay. And how can women get involved? How would you advise, what would you recommend, for women to do to get involved? It could be
yeah,
community-based work, it could be to empower themselves. What would you recommend?
I would first say, um, do what you love. So even if you're not working in that field, or not working in the field, but even if you are not that's not your job, right? Um, get out and do things that you love. Empower yourself by doing things that you love and being in spaces that celebrate you, your accomplishments and who you are just as a person, because when you're able to show up as who you are and feel confident in that, that shows up in your work too. So get out and do things that you love. Refresh yourself with things that you love, even if you don't always love the job or love what you're doing. Make sure you find things that fill your cup up and fill you up as a person.
Absolutely. And that's an excellent note to end on, to fill you up as a person, because the thing is, we're often pouring into others.
Mhm.
And, oftentimes it's not no one pouring back into us. So
Yes.
definitely filling us up. It was
Hmm.
such a pleasure speaking with you. I thank you
You
so
as
much
well.
for coming on and doing this. Is there any other information you would like to share with the audience?
No, if you would like to get in touch with me, I'm Jessica Renae on Facebook. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Hopefully we'll have like a therapy page coming soon. I'm
Yes.
still trying to figure that out, see what that looks like. But yeah, for now, just find me on as Jessica Renae on Facebook.
Thank you, Jessica. Definitely keep me posted on that therapy page if you guys are going to do that.
Okay.
All
All right.
right. It's been a pleasure. I'll keep in touch.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Bye.